Good evening. I would like to call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for April 19th, 2016. May we please have the roll call?
Barbara Brenner,
Here.
Red Brown,
Here.
Barry Buchanan,
Here.
Todd Donovan,
Present.
Ken Mann,
Here.
Satpal Sidhu,
Here.
Carl Weimer.
Here.
Would you please stand and join me in the flag salute?
A little decor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a few announcements. Number one, please, if you have your cell phone with you, put it on vibrate or turn it off. If you'll be handing out any paperwork or handouts of any kind to council members, please also include our staff so we have it for their records. From earlier, from the Committee of the Whole, we had a discussion on Comprehensive Plan Chapter 11 and Appendix G, and we had made some decisions on items that council members had proposed. On Comprehensive Plan Chapter 7 Economics, we just had a briefing and a discussion. On Comprehensive Plan Chapter 6 Transportation, we had discussion and preliminary council direction. And Comprehensive Plan Chapter 2 Land Use, we had discussion and preliminary council direction. We have 8 sets of minutes to...
Did you say chapter 2?
Mhm.
Okay.
We have 8 sets of minutes for consideration this afternoon, this evening. Wow. Number 1, Special Committee of the Whole for March 8th, 2016. Number 2, Special Committee of the Whole for March 8th, 2016 afternoon session. Regular County Council for March 8th, 2016. Surface Water Work Session for March 15th, 2016. Special Committee of the Whole in the morning for March 22nd, 2016. Special Committee of the Whole in the afternoon for March 22nd, 2016. Committee of the Whole for March 22nd, 2016, and the regular County Council for March 22nd, 2016. Do I have a motion for these minutes?
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, corrections, or deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. All right, we're going to move into our public hearing. Audience members who signed up at the back prior to the beginning of the meeting will be called first off these sign-up sheets. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record, and you'll be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of time, and they'll give you 30-second warning, and they will tell you when your time's up after that. The first public hearing is a resolution regarding community development block grant funding application. Do we have a staff report?
I don't think
Nope.
we need one.
We have, no one is signed up, but we'll open the floor, and I will open the public hearing. Do we have anybody who would like to speak?
So good evening. My name is Shannon Hardy, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Unity Care Northwest. Thank you for having us tonight, but also really thank you for considering submitting a community development block grant on our behalf. Unity Care Northwest is a nonprofit community health center that is there to serve the community and provide primary medical, dental, behavioral health, and pharmacy services. Our focus is on serving the low-income and vulnerable populations of Whatcom County. And we have seen a tremendous need for expanding services in North County and have seen our organization's number of users and visits grow tremendously over the last 7-8 years. So in North Whatcom County, there's about 8,000 folks under 200% of the federal poverty level that are not being served by community health centers right now. We currently serve about 4,000 clients in our clinic in Ferndale, and are proposing to build a 23,000 square foot facility off Portal Way that would expand our ability to serve to about double that number of users, but triple our number of visits each year to almost 42,000 visits, and also be able to employ triple the number of staff we have now in the North County. And the location we've chosen to build is really quite central to being able to attract people from Ferndale, Blaine, and Linden, which seem to be about equal in that 8,000 number that's being underserved is pretty equally distributed between those three towns. So it makes it a fairly easy access point for those folks. So we ask for your support in this and think it's, we provide a sliding fee scale to our clients so that it really is a way for people to get services regardless of their ability to pay. And so that's what we're here to do for our community and want your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, I think there's a question for you, ma'am.
Just one question. The place you're planning on locating it, what's its accessibility to public transport?
So right now, Whatcom Transportation Authority has only one bus that's coming through from Blaine, but we have met recently with the Whatcom Transportation Authority, and they're very open to increasing the routes in and around Ferndale, and also actually out to from Blaine to actually increase those coming through, and are willing to build a shelter right on our sidewalk outside of our clinic, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else like to speak regarding community development block grant funding? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. And what are the wishes of the council?
Move
Mr.
approval.
Weimer?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do it.
Mr. Mann?
I would, she was thanking us. I would thank you for stepping up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
doing this and taking the lead. And obviously, we're helping you with the bookkeeping, but just credit to you and your organization for seeing the need and making the effort.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Our second public hearing is the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 8, Resource Lands. And I don't think we have any staff report, do we? Oh, okay, come on.
Seriously?
Good evening, Council. Mark Personius with PDS. I'll just very briefly give you the highlights of what's up for public hearing tonight. These are the proposed changes to the Natural Resource Lands chapter of the Comprehensive Plan. It addresses the 3 natural resource lands designated by the Growth Management Act. Those are mineral lands of long-term commercial significance, forest lands of long-term commercial significance, and ag lands of long-term commercial significance. The highlights of this chapter, at least the changes to this chapter as proposed by council, would be to conduct a county-led and county-wide process to identify, designate, and protect natural resource, mineral resource lands of long-term commercial significance. In the forest lands category, we strengthened policies to maintain and protect our commercial forest land base. And in the agricultural lands chapter, probably the most changes were there. Council introduced a new policy to maintain a minimum of 100,000 acres of agricultural land in the county, develop a workable TDR program to include the ag lands, continue to work on developing a voluntary marketplace approach to compensate farmers for providing watershed improvement actions over and above the regulatory minimums, to examine opportunities to expand the supply of designated agricultural lands county-wide, and update the designation criteria for those ag lands consistent with state-adopted criteria and more recent Supreme Court case decisions, as well as to work, a new section to work to ensure adequate water supplies to support a thriving agricultural sector, and work to improve agricultural practices that improve water quality. So, there you go.
Thank you, Mark. We will open the public hearing. We have folks signed up. We'll start with Chris Diley, then Pam Borso, and Eleanor Hines.
Hi, my name is Christopher Diley, and mine's regarding the fish and wildlife on the Goal 8E and also Goal 8R. Encourage agricultural land uses to voluntarily protect and restore habitat of threatened and endangered species through education and incentive programs. And just because it ties in with the consideration of the reintroduction of the grizzlies into the Cascades, and also that on March 3rd of this year, 2016, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service proposes delisting the Yellowstone grizzly bear due to recovery And the other aspect of this was the letter published in the USA Today by then Governor Dirk Kempthorne in Idaho, which I'll just read very quickly. It's from August 16th, 2001. And that was regarding when they were going to have the grizzlies reintroduced into Idaho. I think it applies to this. So I'll just read quickly. What is the cost of a human life? This is from Dirk Kempthorne. What is the cost of a human life sacrificed for an experimental federal program? Before leaving office, the Clinton administration proposed a plan to bring grizzly bears into Idaho under the Endangered Species Act. But the grizzly bear is not endangered. There are thriving populations of bears in Alaska, Yellowstone National Park, and Canada. Nevertheless, the plan assumed injury or death to people and even calculated the value of human life. A human killed by a grizzly bear in Idaho would cost the federal treasury between $4 million and $10 million, and the plan amortized the annual cost at $80,000 to $200,000. As far as we know, this is the first time that death or injury to humans has been factored into a program proposed by the federal government under the SA. I find that repugnant. All of this was cooked up in a program that was vigorously opposed by 2 Idaho governors, the state's entire congressional delegation, the Idaho legislature, and the Idaho Fish and Game Commission. The Endangered Species Act didn't require bringing grizzlies to Idaho, but the Clinton administration attempted to justify it under a section of the ESA that was originally designed by Congress to invite support for species recovery by providing for flexible management. However, the plan left the final decision-making authority in Washington rather than the states as promised. And I skipped a paragraph and concluding, the president's approach recognizes that real recovery of endangered species
30 seconds, please.
must come with the support of the states. This is, I'll skip a little bit more. The federal government's financial resources should be spent recovering species that are already endangered instead of on payments to American families who may be victims of grizzly bear attacks. And I'll just point out one other part is that there have been 2 recent grizzly attacks up in Alaska, and today in the Alaska Dispatch News, there's the University of Alaska Southeast professor of the mountaineering class was attacked by a grizzly. So you can find that online. Thank you.
Thanks. Pam Borso, then Eleanor Hines.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for all of your attention and your staff's attention to the detail and hard work on Chapter 8. Overall, I think it really does address the needs of our resource lands. There are some adjustments which might make it even better. Please accept the aquatic lands section when it has passed review. This is an excellent addition to the plan which will defend shellfish and fishing consistent with treaty rights with our Indian nations. Thank you for your revisions in sections 8A, 1, and 2 that protect our agricultural lands. Please support a no net loss policy for agricultural and forestry lands. The county is responsible to ensure there's more than enough water to accommodate farms and wildlife, fish, and people. Please revise policy 8A2 to secure an adequate, sustainable supply of water for the farmers, while being mindful to make sure that there's enough quality water in the Nooksack River to meet in-stream flow needs for the fish within the context of the treaty rights. Thank you for revising policy 8E2 that prevents livestock from degrading water. At the same time, please completely remove the section on riverine areas that deals with river bar scalping. Scalped sites promote a loss of habitat complexity. Given that our salmon populations are in distress and many are listed on the Endangered Species Act, I believe that this practice of river bar scalping will only serve to lessen the viability of our salmon populations and to adversely impact the amount and quality of habitat available to them. And thank you so much for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Eleanor Hines and Carly Deathridge and Bob Agater.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Hines, and I'm here tonight as the chair of the Northwest Straits chapter of the Surfrider Foundation, the scientific interest seat at the Whatcom Marine Resources Committee, the lead scientist at Resources for Sustainable Communities, and also as a concerned citizen of Whatcom County who really enjoys our vast water aquatic resources. So I'm going to echo a lot of things that Pam already said, but I think that Chapter 8 of the Comprehensive Plan has several opportunities that are currently up for review that could help support cleaner water and healthier aquatic resources that are worth some consideration. While some of these policies may seem to be a little bit upstream for protecting our marine environment, there's a growing number of scientific reports that support the fact that what we do upland really impacts what we do in our marine environment, such as that recent study that has, I think, over 900 citations supporting how agriculture impacts our Puget Sound salmon. So that said, based on my experience and knowledge, I support Chapter 8, including support for no net loss policies for agriculture and forestry lands, taking out all the references to river bar gravel mining for the mineral resource section, huge support for the proposed action on an aquatic land section to Chapter 8 to defend shellfish and finfish workers and treaty rights for Indian nations, as well as support for processes that will provide adequate water to agriculture within the context of protecting treaty rights and stream flows, as well as water quality. Thank you for your time.
Carly, and then Bob Egger, then Dan and Traxler.
Good evening, Council. Carly Detheridge, Bellingham resident, also staff member at Resources for Sustainable Communities. I'm really impressed, like Eleanor and Pam have said, about Chapter 8. I've seen a lot of the committee meetings and everybody working on Chapter 8, and the work is evident that you've put in a lot of time and effort. Overall, it does a great job balancing all the resource land interests, agriculture, mineral resource lands, forestry, and now aquatic resource lands, hopefully in the future. But of course, there's always room for improvement. The main policy I'm concerned about is riverbar scalping in the mineral resource land section. It seems contradictory to keep this policy in the comp plan, especially since the last time the county approved permits was in 1997. Federal and state regulations already limit riverbar scalping based on the Endangered Species Act for salmon that are listed. The small amount of gravel that can be harvested is not worth the time or money, let alone the impacts to salmon and fish habitat. When scalped bars rebuild over time, it is less stable than a mature bar, and thus reds constructed in it may be prone to scour. So I really hope you all consider removing this section or these policies from the comp plan, or at least prohibiting it. And lastly, I just want to echo everybody's support, like I had mentioned, for the aquatic resource land section. We really need to be putting our upland decisions in consideration with the impacts that happen to shellfish and harvesting. We've seen the closure of Portage Bay, and we've seen the closure of other bays like Drayton Harbor for commercial shellfish harvesting. So I really hope you all consider passing it when it gets to the council. Thank you so much for your time and your effort.
Bob, then Dan and Traxler, then Pam Brady.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your efforts on behalf of the citizens of Whatcom County, and in specifically your work on this section 8 to date. Bob Agater, Lake Whatcom Watershed. I would ask the Council to revise the fifth bullet point in 8A2 concerning the scalping of sand and gravel from the waterways. I believe that's been discussed earlier by two other people earlier, so I won't go into the details of it. But the comments leading up to that suggested it's a bad policy, and then you have a policy allowing it. It makes no sense, and it makes no sense under the Growth Management Act. You're probably aware that the United States and perhaps Whatcom County contributes some money to this. Spend several $1 million shooting coyotes, and yet coyote population remains significantly stable. It does no good. All shooting coyotes does is encourages more pups. It's somewhat similar to what you're talking about in trying to scalp gravel out of the river. all you're doing is encouraging more road to be deposited there in the next major flood. I'd ask the council to revise 8A2 to add discussing securing an adequate, suitable supply of irrigation water sufficient to support the long-term viability of agricultural industry by adding, with special consideration given to ensuring water is available for in-stream flows. In-stream flow is a significant issue in Whatcom County, and it needs to be identified in the Growth Management Act. And then, as you are aware, I'm a member of the Advisory Committee on Wolves to the State Fish and Wildlife Commission and to the Director. And I just spent 5 days over there in training about wildlife and such. And so I will write individually to you a letter why you ought to stay out of the grizzly bear reintroduction or augmentation issue. Thank you very much.
Dannon and then Pam Brady.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dannon Traxler. I'm an attorney in Bellingham, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Farm Bureau and several related groups. And I'm just letting you know that we're coordinating to submit a joint letter to you on Chapter 8 resource lands. And we were hoping to get that into you today, but coordinating with several groups can sometimes be a little time-consuming. So we're hoping to have that into you by the end of this week, which hopefully will give you plenty of time to review it before your next discussion of Chapter 8. So please look for that and carefully consider our comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Pam Brady, and I'm a resident of Bellingham here speaking tonight on behalf of BP Cherry Point Refinery. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and to be involved in the process of the comp plan update. BP has been an active participant in various planning processes in the community, including as a member of the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve Management Plan Implementation Committee and the Marine Resources Committee. And we share the county's desire to effectively manage and protect aquatic resources at Cherry Point while balancing plans for long-term growth and economic development. BP was a member of the Cherry Point Work Group that participated in the original development of the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve Management Plan, and we support its goals. Though BP's aquatic lands lease area is not located in the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve area, we continue to implement both voluntary and required plans, programs, procedures to protect water quality and aquatic habitats that are in compliance with local, state, federal plans and regulations. And additionally, we work with the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, which is the owner and administrator of the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve Management Plan, to ensure that ongoing operations at BP's refinery are consistent with the plan. And there are numerous state and local and federal agencies maintaining jurisdiction over land use and aquatic resources within Whatcom County. And plans and regulations adopted by each agency can affect positive outcomes when done in coordination, but it is also important to recognize the respective mandates and authorities of each agency and their implementations. We have continued to review and monitor the comp plan process, and we noticed several proposed amendments to Chapter 2 and Chapter 8 resource lands relating to the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve and aquatic resource lands that have been brought forward by the public and by the council, and including Goals 2CC and associated policies and the new aquatic resource lands section in Chapter 8. And we understand that the proposed aquatic lands section has been postponed for now and will be sent to the MRC and to Whatcom County Planning and Development for further review. However, we question the need for additional aquatic resource text amendments in the comp plan that would duplicate existing plan and regulatory mandates. So as the County Council reviews the 2016 Comprehensive Plan, we urge you to avoid incorporation of modified elements from other plans and regulations, such as the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve Management Plan, that may create redundancy and potential conflicts in its implementation. And we encourage you
30
to
seconds,
support
please.
the Planning Commission's original recommendations. So thank you for that, and we look forward to continuing our engagement.
That's the end of the folks that have signed up. Would anyone else like to come down and speak on Chapter 8 of the Comprehensive Plan? That's resource lands.
Wendy Harris. I know a number of issues have already been raised. So and I only have time to highlight a few of them. If there's one single thing that you do, I would ask that it be remove the policy on taking gravel out of our riverbeds. That's going to destroy the aquatic ecosystem. It's really important. I'm not going to go into details because you've heard enough about it. The second most important thing I'd ask you to do is remove the policy saying that integrated pest management control policies will improve water quality. And that involves herbicides and pesticides. First of all, they don't improve water quality. And I'm referring specifically to Comp Plan Policy 8-3E. Encourage the use of integrated pest management practices, including herbicides and pesticides that protect water quality. I think you'll find the majority of residents here in Whatcom County don't want to see pesticides and herbicides used. Chemicals are really dangerous and we're overusing them. The other thing I'd like to address is this false balancing test that's popped up consistently throughout the comp plan. Where, for instance, I believe it's in the ag section, you talk about in policy 8E-7, work with the watershed improvement districts, drainage districts, and Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife to resolve trade-offs associated with fish and wildlife habitat on agricultural lands. What trade-offs? We're talking about critical areas. Critical areas have one requirement. You must protect their functions and values from a net loss, and that involves the ecosystem in which the critical area is located. So how somebody can find a trade-off in there, I don't know. The test is pretty black and white. Critical areas are an overlay on top of any kind of land, including resource land, and they must be honored. And I think this comes from this sense. We've been told for many years by BIA that we have these competing and equal policies in the GMA, and that's not true either. We have to give some form of implementation to each of the policy goals, but we don't have to treat them equally. We are expected to emphasize different ones more dependent on our specific needs. So I really hope we can get away from this balancing test and this trade-off test, because that's just not how the law works. It's not what the county needs. So I'd like to thank you for the work that you've done on this, but I hope that you'll listen to some of the wonderful suggestions you've heard tonight and make this plan even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing, and I'd like to thank you all for your comments tonight. Moving on to our open session. During open session, members of the public will have up to 3 minutes to address the council on any issue relevant to county business. Please state your name for the record. If it's complicated, please spell it, and speak into the microphone. We thank you in advance for your cooperation. So come on down, anyone who would like to speak to us during open session.
Wendy Harris. Earlier today, I know that you addressed the comp plan chapter on the environment, and I wasn't able to attend. But I'd ask that you remove a policy in there that states you're going to leave air quality issues up to the Northwest Clean Air Agency. We are having significant air quality issues here. In fact, air quality and traffic are our greatest environmental health threats. And I want to tell you, I've contacted the Clean Air Agency regarding a problem I have where I live, and they literally would not help me. Not only wouldn't they help me, they lectured me and they were rude. There's a whole mobile home park that burns continuously, and I was told by the Northwest Clean Air Agency, we are an education, primarily an education organization. And then I got lectured for my cultural insensitivity because, it's very important in certain cultures, that people burn wood and that, there's a sense of pride that men have when they can support their families. And I'm like, well, what about people that are getting sick? Isn't that who you're supposed to protect? And she goes, well, I don't have anything to help you. I'm like, not like that was it. She said, maybe if you had one neighbor that was burning wood and they didn't know they shouldn't, we could talk to them. That's literally all they had. I've also been working with the fire department. I want to tell you the county fire department has been very good to work with for the most part, but they're telling me their hands are tied as well. So, we have an issue because we have the unincorporated area of the county, but not everybody's living on 5 acres. That mobile home park's very close, and it's about a half mile, and I'm downwind of them, and I live in a community where homes are close. So even though you have the unincorporated county, you do have people living right next to each other, similar to what you would find in an urban environment. So I'm asking you, not at this point to make a change in policy, but please don't abandon your ability to take action over this, because given the health impacts from traffic and wood, I really think we are going to have to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak during the open session?
Yeah, hi, Christopher Bruce Diley again, D-E-I-L-E. And following up, just to capsulize, because that was a lot of information I tried to give. And whether or not this is a contentious issue, I think is irrelevant. I think this is precisely the place that this issue should be addressed, about the reintroduction of the grizzlies into the Cascades. Because as Kempthorne pointed out in his article, that was from Risk, the name of the article was Risk to Humans Too Great. Again, that was USA Today from August 16th, 2001. That was the then governor of Idaho, Dirk Kempthorne. And what he pointed out in the article is that however, the plan left the final decision-making authority in Washington rather than the states as promised. So he's pointing out that the entire issue of the grizzlies that were going to be reintroduced into Idaho, it was a matter of the states to be involved in it. And for local government to be involved in the decision-making and to be involved in the process. And so I think it should be discussed here. And I think that his point that the grizzly bear is not endangered, bump that up. That was 2001, he made that point. You bump that up right now to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service proposes delisting of the Yellowstone grizzly bear from the federal list of endangered and threatened wildlife. Right here in March of this year. So the big push for reintroducing the grizzlies into the Cascades is this misconception that it needs to be done. It doesn't need to be done. And nobody's addressing this. Nobody's saying this. And yet people are being misled on the public safety issue and being told that bear spray is the best thing to use. And it's not the best thing to use, because I've shared over and over again, it didn't stop the bear when we used it in our attack. And I could have been killed. Both my friend and I could have been killed. And yet they're giving misinformation to the public on this. And just the last 2 points is that, with these 2 recent attacks up in Alaska, it just happened, 2 bear maulings, and it was the professor of the University of Alaska Southeast with a mountaineering class with 11 students. And that could have been Chris Morgan from Western Washington University, his ecology class. He could have been in the same position and been mauled by a bear, and you'd be talking about it here and wondering, okay, was he using bear spray or not? Because he recommends bear spray. So the issue needs to be addressed, and just because it's contentious doesn't mean that's dysfunctional. To say, oh, well, it's contentious, it shouldn't be addressed. That's entirely dysfunctional.
30 seconds,
government.
please.
So I think it's a good thing. I think it's healthy to bring this stuff out and talk about it and discuss it and not cover it up and not publish people's letters like my letters and suppress the information, because I can't even get the information out. And I feel like like I said, I feel redundant coming here and bringing up the issue. But I think it's very important. And I'm glad to have the opportunity. So thank you.
Come on down.
My name is William Blaze from Bellingham, Washington. I'm a Christian, born and raised in the United States, and a resident of Whatcom County for 25 years. Just got back from North Dakota, working to save my house and provide for my family. This is what I came back to. First, there are pot stores springing up all over the place. I understand not only did we legalize marijuana for medical use, but recreation as well. And the reason? We need tax dollars. Instead of selling drugs, what about providing a climate for livable jobs? Second is same-sex marriage. What next? Let's legalize pedophilia, bestiality, prostitution, multiple wives and husbands. I guess there's supposed to be a gay pride march. There's nothing prideful about being gay. It's perverting the natural order of things. There's a bike run that is naked here in Bellingham, approved by the city council. I called the police department. I was told they are undermanned and can't stop the 50 or so participants doing what they're doing. What about Planned Parenthood? Not only are we killing babies as a woman's right, but we are selling baby parts, and oh my God, if that wasn't enough, we keep some of them alive for their hearts and their brains. What God would bless that? This is what's changed on the local level, not including whatever is happening with the federal government, trying to change property rights through grants, shipping Syrian refugees / terrorists, certainly in the Seattle area, and many trade agreements shipping our jobs overseas. Deuteronomy 11:26-28, the God of the Bible tells us, "See, I am setting before you today blessings and curses. The blessing, if you listen to the commandments of Yahweh your God, that I am commanding you today, and a curse if you do not listen." Yahweh is not Allah. He is the God of Israel, the Most High Elohim. His commandments are the rule of law. And when we throw his commandments out to justify our wicked ways, not only do we bring a curse on ourselves, but on our community we represent. At the county level, we can put a stop to a lot of this.
30
I'm asking
seconds,
you
please.
to consider making Jesus Christ your foundation when making laws and bringing blessing back to Whatcom County. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brooks Anderson, and I guess the first thing I'd like to say is I really appreciate everybody with everybody's different opinions being able to say what they want to say and what they feel and believe. It's a great privilege, I think, that we can do that and do that. I wasn't really expecting to speak tonight, but there have been several reports in the paper and Facebook about how our county executive wants to delay the EMS funding until after there's a new funding to do with the jail. I just feel that's a terrible idea. And the three things that he's brought up as being the three most important pieces are to do with the jail, the EMS, and correcting what's gone on at the county courthouse. It's been bad construction. So the priorities to me seem to be really wrong. And I'm hoping that as last year you did make your independent decisions about what to do and how to address working with the executive, that you will do that this year. I really appreciate the fact that you have so much on your plate, but it seems to me this whole thing that we're going into now with LOS, which took me quite a while to remember what that was, but the idea of level of services. Where are we with what services are we talking about in terms of what's in the best interest of Whatcom County? Tough decisions, but I really feel the priorities of what the executive has said out loud several times are not the levels of services
30 seconds, please.
that benefit those of us, most of us, who live in Whatcom County. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak during open session? Okay, seeing no one, we will close the open session and we will go to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, the Whatcom County Finance and Administrative Services Committee met today and we considered several items, the first of which was to request authorization for the county executive to enter into a cost share agreement between Whatcom County and Northwest Pipeline LLC to cover the cost of emergency measures to stabilise the bank at North Fork Nooksack River near Rutsats Road and associated mitigation measures in the amount of $700,000. This committee discussed this and forwarded it with unanimous approval to the council, and I so move.
This is a consent agenda.
You know, you are right.
Huh?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We had two items on the consent agenda, one of which is the one I just spoke about in verbatim. These two items were considered by the county, the finance committee, and we moved both of them forward with approval to the county.
Okay, thank you. Full council. Ms. Brenner, discussion.
Discussion, yes. I'm asking our attorney, the second one has a contract in perpetuity. And it was always been my understanding that we can't put contracts in perpetuity because we can't tie the hands of future councils. And that, I mean, I've never heard of us doing something in perpetuity.
The contract is not in perpetuity. The contract has a defined term. I understand that it refers to some responsibilities between the land trust and the landowner that are in perpetuity, but the contract itself is to monitor that, and it isn't in perpetuity.
Okay.
How come you didn't believe that when I said it?
Because you're not our attorney. You're Ken, she's our attorney. What do you think?
Okay, any other discussion on our consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
All right, now, Mr. Chair, I shall do these verbatim.
Okay.
The first item up is an ordinance amending the 2016 Whatcom County budget, eighth request in the amount of $234,633. This received unanimous approval from the committee, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, the next two items are the council acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. The first was a resolution amending the 2016 Flood Control Zone District and Subzone budgets. Second request in the amount of $200,000. This received unanimous approval, and I so move.
Okay, the motion's before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, could you please call the roll?
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes. Question.
Yes.
A resolution, is it because we're the flood control? Yeah, okay.
We should have different hats, literally.
I know, it's not just doing that, it's actually, you got to, the process is different.
I mean hats.
Okay.
Next item was again a flood control resolution amending the 2016 Flood Control Zone District and Subzone budgets. Third request in the amount of $85,000. This received a recommendation of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any discussion? Ms. Brenner?
I just want to say for people who are here, we're not just rushing right through this stuff. This was in committee today, and I think most, if not all of us, were there. So for those of you who think that we're not paying attention, I think we are.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, can you please call the roll?
Barry Buchanan?
Yes.
Todd Donovan?
Yes.
Ken Man?
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu?
Yes.
Carl Weimer?
Yes.
Barbara Brenner?
Yes.
Red Brown?
Yes. Next item was an ordinance amending the ordinance number 2014-083, establishing the Cedar Hills/Euclid Stormwater Improvements Fund and establishing a project-based budget for the Cedar Hills/Euclid Stormwater Improvements. This received unanimous approval from the committee, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan?
Yes.
Ken Man?
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu?
Yes.
Carl Weimer?
Yes.
Barbara Brenner?
Yes.
Red Brown?
Yes.
Barry Buchanan?
Yes, that passes unanimously.
Again, as the flood control zone District Board of Supervisors, there was a request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract amendment between the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and the Whatcom Conservation District to provide outreach to the agricultural community in pollution identification and correction, PIC focus areas in the amount of $45,000. This received a vote of 2 with one abstention, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
And one abstention.
One abstention. 6-0 to 1. Mr. Brown abstaining.
Next item was a resolution from the Whatcom County Council updating the appendix of the 2015 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, that motion's before us. Any discussion?
Yeah,
Ms.
sorry,
Brenner.
just when you thought you're going to get off. Yeah, I want to move to remove some of the items. And they said I couldn't do it in committee, so I'm doing it now. Okay. I would like to remove the State Street remodel.
Ms. Brenner, sorry, can I just ask which page you're on?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 78. 78. Do you want to know my reason?
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Okay, all right. This, along with some of the other ones, are because I'm getting tired of us just getting another request and another request, and another request. I know this is just to keep it open for funding and stuff like that, but we got to stop buying fixers, and because we end up paying more than if we bought something that was in good shape to begin with, and that's what I feel about State Street.
Okay, so are you moving to remove that?
Yeah, from the list.
Okay, is there a second?
Which one you are talking about?
The second one, yeah.
Civic Center remodel,
That's the third one. I'm going to make a motion on that one, too.
State Street.
Mr. Chair, if I can just offer clarification. The Straight Street property is where the current morgue is.
Okay.
That's where it should, that building's should be nothing. Never mind.
Okay, I'm still waiting to hear a second.
See, this is how they shut me down. We never used to have seconds, and now we're having seconds, and it definitely.
Second.
Thank you. Because you know what? This doesn't, without a second, this doesn't get put in the minutes, and nobody knows how people stand on things. I think people deserve to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
I already did.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I supported the State Street purchase for a couple of reasons. One is it contains the county morgue, which my understanding is would cost us about $1 million to replace under current program, under the current regulations. And while I would always prefer to buy a building at a bargain price that doesn't require any work, we purchased this, I believe, below appraised value, And if we'd had to build it ourselves, it would have cost us significantly more. So I believe actually even with the repair work, it's actually a pretty good deal for the county.
Ms. Brenner?
I just want to point out this remodel, these never get done. They come back year after year for more money for remodel. So saying that it would cost us more and more, I'd like to know, when we get done with this, exactly how much it ended up costing, because there's never an end.
Mr. Sadhu?
I believe this is just a project estimated. They haven't spent this money. They haven't done remodel. They're asking for remodel when the money is available. So removing it, I'm just trying to understand, removing out from this list, what purpose does it serve?
Ms. Brenner?
It shouldn't have been purchased to begin with. It was not in good shape.
It's done deal. We own it.
You know what? We could sell it. We keep talking about how it's so important that we have items that are prioritized, that people are really, wanting to have prioritized. And when you put all this hodgepodge together, we're never going to get some of the most important things done. And go ahead, never mind.
I don't know that you can remove things from this.
I can. I was told I can make motions to remove them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Mr. Mann?
Okay, so I don't know how many of these things you're going to propose, but I know that my comments here will apply to all of them, which is I understand your discomfort with some of these properties that we own. I have agreed with you on some of them. I have not voted to fund some of them. I also agree that these lists they make you feel somewhat dirty in that you're just kind of putting together this list of things you want and you hope you get funded, and they have to be on the list in order to qualify for this other list and to get in the queue for funding. And it's kind of the worst of governmental paperwork and bureaucracy. I get all that. I don't like it either. However, I do not believe that this is the place for us to completely re-strategize or re-envision our capital facilities infrastructure. These are properties that we own that need some help. I don't like all of them, but I think to take them off the list, essentially all it does is jeopardize outside funding. And, I don't support this large jail project that's on here. I could vote to take it off, but if we do, in the unlikely scenario that this community votes to approve this astronomical funds for a jail, I sure as heck want to be eligible for outside funding. So that's why I would leave it on here. And that goes for all of them. So those are my comments, and that applies to all future motions that you make to remove items.
You don't even know what I'm going to...
I know.
Mr. Donovan?
And I seconded this so we can have this discussion.
Just once.
Yeah. What really bothers me is that this is called an economic development strategy, and it's not an economic development strategy. It's a list of projects to maybe get federal money or outside money for. And I just, in supporting this, I echo Councilmember Mann's statement that we are not necessarily making policy decisions that we support these rankings or even these projects. Is that if there's an opportunity to get some external funding to do some of this, we have a list, right? So there's a list.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I think you opened up a point I'd like to add on to. This is not, I completely agree, this is not an economic development strategy. It's a list of infrastructure projects. I certainly hope it's not, because the new jail is listed, and while I do believe we need a new jail, and I do believe we need to remodel the existing jail, both of which are on this list, I certainly hope that's not the county's economic development strategy, is to build a new jail.
We have to call it that.
I then also, if I may just ask, Madam Clerk, could you just explain on the record what happens if a motion is proposed and not seconded? Do you record that in the minutes? Could we get that on the record?
Yes, Jill does transcribe seconds.
Right.
Or a lack of a second.
Correct.
So a motion made is recorded.
That's
And
correct.
the fact that it wasn't supported is recorded. Thank you.
Ms. Brenner?
That was not what I said. You guys are not, you're just not taking any position by not seconding it. I think you should take a position and vote no if you want to vote no. That way people understand specifically, and you can't go around telling them later, well, I didn't, I had some concerns, but it wasn't really about this or that. I just think there's too much wiggle room for council members to not have to make their positions known.
Well, let's stick to the motion
All right.
and not
Well, I'm really,
editorialize
Yeah.
about process.
why not?
Yeah, that's why I seconded it.
I know. See, he did it so I could editorialize.
Other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That fails 1-6 with Ms. Brenner in favor. Ms. Brenner?
I want to remove the Civic Center remodel, and I am allowed to say something about it before, or whether or not we get a second or not. And this is even more egregious because this was a mess, this building was, and I didn't support purchasing it. And it was supposed to, first they come in and they want to do some window repairs and this repair and that repair. And then they come later and want to do structural repairs, which required those windows to be removed. And we'd have to put new windows in. And this is, and the other thing that's really bothering me, if you have all these things on here, anybody can prioritize stuff over another thing, even though we may not all agree that that's what, you're just putting this big list in there, and it might end up that the things that really are not appropriate will get done, and the others won't, no matter what you think is and isn't appropriate. And that's why it's not a level playing field here. So there you have it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
To remove it.
We have no second. Ms. Brenner?
And I'm being very good here because I have a whole bunch more and I'm not going to even do them. But there was, I want to remove West Horton Road.
Which page was that on?
Page 81. And can I speak to it? Yeah. I can. Okay, and the reason is, this is that whole, it's been done under the claim that it's going to be this great east-west connector, but we have a good east-west connector, and we're not doing anything on Slater, and this would compete directly with what we would want to do for Slater Road. And this is about helping out Costco. And I love Costco, I shop there, but I don't want to see it move to an area that's already E level and make it E minus level. And that's what this is going to end up doing.
Do we have a second?
Actually, Mr. Chair, I will second this because I want to speak to it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion, Mr. Brown.
And that's the purpose of a second, to secure at least the interest of one, demonstrate there's at least the interest of one other member on the council who wishes to discuss it. So the reason I would speak against removing this is I look at the funding sources. I see the majority, if not potentially all the funding, will actually come from sources other than the county government.
Ms. Brenner?
Yeah, but so could Slater. And Slater Road, we actually have developers who are willing to pay for their part of the road there, which is quite a bit of road.
Mr. Brown?
However, as I understand it, if this project is not on the list, then it won't qualify for any of this funding.
If it's what?
If it's not on the list, it won't qualify for any of this funding.
I know. So Slater Road wouldn't qualify if it's not on the list.
Mr. Chair.
That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Donovan?
I'm going to use that second. I hope, okay, so it's listed as location for the Slater Road thing that we have a second to talk about, Whatcom County. The jail lists Labounty Road. Are we committing to Labounty if we leave that there? Are we, obviously, to try to stick to the thing the second's on, this road would be, Slater Road is in Whatcom County. Shouldn't the jail say Whatcom County instead of LaBounty Road?
Well, Bounty Road is in Whatcom County.
Well,
in
but it's a
Ferndale.
specific capital project that is, by this definition, LaBounty Road. I'm stretching with the second you had by the location thing, but just want to get that out there.
Well,
Ms. Brenner?
yeah, but it would be LaBounty to get it onto the freeway. LaBounty is right by the freeway there. So I'm talking about east-west connector.
No, and I was using the second on your motion to
Okay.
deflect back to this issue of all of these things list locations, some very general, that one really specific. And what do we do about that?
West Horton's pretty specific.
Yeah, okay, LaBounty Road would be the jail, the thing in this economic development strategy. It's not saying Whatcom County as if a jail would be anywhere. It's saying it's going to be at LaBounty Road. And are we then precluding ourselves from getting funds for a jail that might not be on LaBounty Road?
Tyler's shaking his head no.
Tyler says no.
Okay, I would rather that's at Whatcom County.
Well, as soon as we dispose of this motion,
Okay.
you're welcome to make one.
All
Mr.
right.
Brown?
Dispose of it.
That needs to vote on.
Oh.
That's not a bad thing.
Positively or negatively?
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
My question's answered.
Okay. Any other comments?
I
On
think
the-
I'm done.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That fails 1-6.
Okay, I didn't want to be in the business of like I just said I don't want us to be walking through this list and like taking things off.
But here we are.
Yeah, but I am, and I'm actually, I put a motion out before about, let's do the jail in Ferndale, but if people are concerned about that language, just bring attention to it. We could just say Whatcom County instead of LaBounty Road.
Would you like to make a motion?
Now there's a motion,
Okay. Do we have a second?
Sorry, specifically, what is the motion?
When you get down to 1, 2, 3, 4, items 5 and 6, location is listed Bounty Road, just say Whatcom County.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Brenner?
Well, you're confusing me because everything's in Whatcom County, even in the city, and there's a whole bunch of them that have name, that has just the street. We know some of.
jail, LaBounty Road.
Yeah, and this says State Street remodel, 1500 North State Street.
That's what the building is.
That building's already there. The jail isn't there.
This is like saying the
Oh,
jail.
so you're talking about, does that commit us to
Yeah.
putting it there? Okay.
Which,
Discussion?
I have a question to the staff that we had another list from the Public Works that prioritizing the projects and everything, and that was just like some of these Public Works projects are on here too. Like, why they are two competing things? Another thing is the lifespan of this resolution is 1 year. The lifespan of the Public Works list was 6 years. It was 6 plus 1. You drop the 1, you add the 1, and then you, out of that 6-year list, you take 1-year items which you prioritize. Will do it in 2016, and comes to the council for approval of that 1 year. Why don't we adopt something like this and there's some kind of priority or some kind of numbering system or grading that this has 100 points or this has 60 points or 20 points. It's confusing the staff as well as the council because we don't get that much time to know all the background of 50, 60, 70 projects. And this whole thing, if you look at probably several $100 million here. And like Councilwoman Brenner has said, that you are making us to commit to something. It's very difficult to do that. As much we understand that it is needed. It's needed because the federal grants and the state grants and the agency grants are random and they come up, and you need the ability to be able to apply to that. But you got to give due respect to the council members also, that how do we decide these things, and have some kind of sanity to saying yay or nay. So what I'm saying is that this is the list. You just add something at the bottom or top, or stick it in the middle. Like, how does this work? If anybody can explain that, please.
So Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. Earlier today during committee, there was a discussion about the SEDS list and how it's prepared. And I understand some of the questions, and it gets to the ability of the SEDS list is to get those future funding, whether it be federal or state grants, or the ability to use the economic development investment, the EDI funds. And so this is the list that allows for some of those funding decisions to be made in the future. Next month, we will be bringing forward capital improvement plan. We will be discussing State Street, Girard Street, Civic Center, some of the other projects as it relates to policy decisions to move on those capital projects, as well as through the budget process on what the council would like to invest money into and not. And there will be recommendations that come out of that. Similar to how the annual road program will be working in this fall. And so this list allows for some of those future funding decisions and policy decisions to know that they can apply for and use those funds.
Yeah.
As it was indicated earlier in committee, we could add to the list in the future, and we can remove from the list in the future as well.
So-
And so I understand some of the concerns, and maybe we can provide a little bit more education on the SEDS process in the future. But at this point, I would recommend moving forward with the SEDS list as it's designed, and we can make some of those policy decisions and funding decisions as we move forward.
So you really answered the question. So the thing is, your concern is that if it is on there, it's going to get funded or done, or like repairs to the civic center. Okay. Well, the thing is, that's going to come to the council when they actually want to spend that money. It's not that being on the list does not give you authority to go spend this money or do anything with it. It's just like an inventory of the projects you believe that possibly can get funded, and we can work with them. We're not really approving you to go spend money on these. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, and I guess getting back to the motion, I think Councilmember Sadhu has address some of the stuff that Councilmember Brown was talking about. We will have policy decisions to make about whether we want to do any of these things. We want to have it in the hopper that if we do those, they can qualify for other funding sources. So, but in that regard, like, I want to open up the window for jail, so that, maybe this is just a small technical thing, but it would be a jail somewhere in Whatcom County, not necessarily a jail on the Bounty Road.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, I know all that. There's nothing that you're telling me right now, either of you, that is something I didn't know. The problem is, as soon as things get on a list, and this is how government operates, you put something on there and it's harder to get it off. If you don't put it on and make them work for it to get it on there, you got a much better potential of getting what you want, because I have a lot of faith in our public works and in the deputy executive and everything, and I'm sure they can promote anything they want. And once it's on the list, it's on the list.
Well, so can we. I mean.
Yeah, but that's what we should be doing now, which is what I'm doing. I'm promoting taking some of these off.
Mr. Brown? Oh, Mr. Weimer.
Do we have a motion in front of us?
We do.
Okay.
I was just going to remind.
Was there a second?
Yes, there was. Okay. The motion is to remove on the project designated new jail to change La Bounty Road to Whatcom County.
Yes.
Was that on both the sheriff's headquarters?
Yeah, for both of them.
For both of them.
Just, it would increase our opportunity
Yeah.
to ask for grants for a jail that's not just on the Bounty Road.
Okay. Any other
Maybe it's a
discussion?
minor thing, but.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1. Any other motions on this?
Yeah, but you don't want to hear anymore right now, so I'm not going to do them.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that under the sources of potential funding, which applies to each of these categories, that we remove the EDI funding option from all of these projects until the council has had a discussion and a decision on what we're going to use our EDI monies for. I guess I've already got a second halfway
You
through.
do have a second, yes. Mrs. Brenner?
Well, I don't see how you can do that and some of you not support what I'm saying. EDI funding is just EDI funding. This doesn't mean anything's going to happen. We heard what everybody just said. This is just to tell us the possibilities. And when you say it on this one, that we got to be careful where we're spending our EDI money before we put it in here, it's kind of opposite of what people were just saying on the council, that this doesn't commit us to anything.
I have a question for Deputy Executive. Is the potential funding column merely the, it's called potential, but is it the eligible funds for those projects?
Yes.
So that's just eligibility.
Right. No, and I recognise it'll make no functional difference, but what I think we need to do as a community is have a really serious discussion about how we're spending our economic development money, because I don't consider fixing the exterior of the courthouse is improving economic development in the community. Neither do I see, fixing the morgue. While I think fixing the morgue is important, it's not, at least I hope it's not an economic development opportunity.
Depends on who's on what end.
So I think we've gone through this. We've been collecting taxes now on this program for I think almost 20 years, or maybe it's 15 years. And I think it's time we have a full council discussion as to what we want this money being spent on that will actually assist economic development in the community. Yeah.
Mr. Weimer?
I agree that we need to have that discussion too. I think I brought that up before, that we need to reassess the way our EDI money is spent. I'm not sure I'm going to support that here. I think the use of EDI in this is not potentially correct. I think it's kind of like calling it the flood fund. The flood fund, and it can only be used for flood. EDI can be used for a variety of things other than just economic development. So we need to probably assess what the name implies versus what the reality of the fund is also.
Mr. Brown?
I've looked at the RCW on this, and the RCW is written that the EDI is spent for, I won't capture the words correctly, but it's either basically public infrastructure or the funding of personnel and economic development offices. So that's the guardrails around that particular fund.
Right, and these are public infrastructure.
Right. But I don't think they move the needle at all, typically, on economic development.
Ms. Brenner?
Well, actually, if you want to get fairly technical, there's a whole lot of stuff that happens inside the courthouse in different departments that has to do with costs of permits and the valuation and things like that, and taxes and stuff. To me, that definitely has something to do with economic development, if you want to be broad about it. And to me, you can't have it both ways. If you're concerned before you put that in, then there should be concern on all of these about committing to even considering this stuff. So,
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
That passes 4-3?
No.
No, no, and no.
No.
Yes. Okay. Passes 4-3.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on Mr. Weimer?
Yes, I move that we remove all of the projects that only have EDI funding for a potential funding source, because they shouldn't be on the list since we just took EDI off the source list.
Oh, that's an interesting.
Either that or put another source in there.
Yes.
Will you have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
And I think Mr. Schroeder wants to speak.
Let's let Mr. Schroeder speak.
I was just going to put a little background to this conversation, because the EDI fund is actually a rural sales tax. And the state law allows for rural sales tax, and the county has created a policy in regards to how that money is distributed over the years, and we've termed it the economic development, the EDI fund, so that we are allocating a certain percentage out to different public projects, because the EDI, or the rural sales tax, has to be used for public infrastructure and public projects associated with it. The list here from the county's perspective and the county's facilities are from that portion of the EDI fund that's specifically for county facilities. It doesn't impact the percentage that we divvy out or we allocate out to different projects associated with it. So that's why most of this list was EDI. And that's the surrounding part of why the list is created with EDI in that situation, so that we can use that in the future. So I just wanted to give that little bit of background to it.
Is there another name for the tax than EDI?
Most jurisdictions call it the rural sales tax.
So why don't you, rather than putting EDI there, why don't you put the real source of that money?
It is EDI.
EDI is.
That's what we call the rural sales tax.
We do.
No, but they can allocate rural sales tax to EDI and something else as well. Did I understand correctly?
So the state legislature in 1997 authorized rural counties to collect rural sales tax.
Yes.
And each county can make a decision on how that money is allocated. When that happened in 97, the late 90s to the early 2000s, we determined it best to do this certain percentage to county facilities, we as the county as a whole, and then a certain percentage to the loan and the grant opportunities, similar to what we did with
the port.
With the port,
Yeah.
exactly. And so through that process, it was termed locally the EDI fund.
Okay, so that's the only name you have.
Correct.
Mr. Weimer.
And that was my point when I said we need to look at it, because it can be used for more than just economic development. And I will withdraw my motion because I was just being facetious.
And I seconded it because I wanted to have this conversation, because just going back to what I said before, this tinkering with this list right now is probably the worst way for us to go about prioritizing infrastructure projects or economic development investment projects, or any of these things. You know, that we've got our 6-year TIP, we've got all kinds of longer range planning processes for this, and I think doing it on the SEDS list is just the absolute least efficient, least effective way to go about doing it.
Mr. Brown?
And likewise, my reason for bringing this issue up is not that I don't support any of these projects, it's just that one of my frustrations in the 2 years I've been on the council is seeing what we define as economic development activities and how we spend money that is dedicated towards, it's called a rural sales tax, but the specific purpose of that rural sales tax was for rural counties to have money for economic development, the promotion of economic development. And on the time I've been on the council, I have been underwhelmed at the opportunities that have been presented to us to actually make an impact on the economic development and job creation in this community for the way we've used those funds. So that's why I'd like to draw attention to it by my motion.
Mr. Weimer.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I agree that what we call economic development isn't always, but the fund is also for public infrastructure, and as we realize now that we almost have a $200 million bill because we put off maintaining public infrastructure, I don't think we want to remove the one of the few funding sources we have that will help deal with that.
Ms. Brenner.
I need to make one correction. If you're talking about the courthouse, it wasn't because it wasn't maintained, it was because it was built shoddy to begin with. So that was not about maintaining. And it should have been done correct with all the money that was spent. That's something I'd like to know. To date, since that remodel thing that was supposed to really do the job, how many tens of millions of dollars have we spent? And now we're going to have to redo the whole thing. But I bet it's a lot.
Chair, can we stay on topic?
I'm gonna make a motion. I really appreciate what Mr. Weimer just said. As on the prevailing side of the motion to remove the EDI under potential sources, I'm going to move to reconsider.
Second.
Good. Third.
Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passes 5-2. So we would now take a vote on the original motion of removing EDI from the potential funding sources. Is there any other discussion?
Excuse me, can you clarify for us what the vote was on that last one? Who voted which way, please?
It was Mr. Donovan, Mr. Brown voted no. So we're back to the original motion of removing the EDI from the potential funding sources column. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye. No,
Say
sorry.
the motion again.
Never mind.
The motion is back to Councilmember Brown's original motion of removing EDI from the potential funding sources column of the table. Correct.
All those in favor?
Okay, and so is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
So that fails by the same 5-2.
Good process.
Now we're back to the original motion of the entire SEDS plan as amended by Mr. Donovan's motion to replace La Bounty Road with Whatcom County under new jail and new sheriff office projects.
Yes.
Any discussion on that main motion?
I thought we already did that.
Now we're doing the whole list.
Now the whole list.
Oh, the whole.
That's the
The
whole
amendment.
list, yeah, as amended by the one. Any discussion on that motion?
Really?
Mr. Weimer?
I'd like to move the Linden treatment plant to Nooksack.
Okay. See, no more discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Rough one, guys.
Whoa.
Oh, I didn't vote aye. Was that the whole thing? No.
You want to vote nay?
I didn't even vote.
What?
I'm voting no. Yes.
6-1.
6-1. No way am I splitting that.
That was 6-1. Dana, did you get that?
6-1, Ms. Brenner opposed.
I
All
guess
right,
I was
other
voting.
items. We have an ordinance amending Whatcom County Code, Chapter 2.130, to revise Economic Development Investment Board membership. I would entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, would you please call the roll?
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Todd Donovan.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We have an ordinance amending Whatcom County Code, Chapter 2.34, to revise Agricultural Advisory Committee membership. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Satpal Sidhu,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ken Mann.
Yes.
Okay, we move on now to executive appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Request confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Jen Glyzinski to the Purchase of Development Rights Oversized Committee. I'd entertain
Move
a-
confirmation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for confirmation. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Introduction items. We have one item. Do we have a motion to introduce?
I'll move approval. To introduce.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Other committee reports. No
Oh.
natural resources this morning.
Nothing else from finance?
Nothing else from finance, public works?
Yeah, we actually, get to it. I took notes. We had a presentation in Public Works for honorary road naming, and we made a motion to recommend to the full council that we move ahead and have staff bring us forward, set a hearing and have staff bring forward the recommended language.
Excuse me, I believe there was a ordinance in your packet today.
Right.
That you could actually introduce this evening. Is that what
Would
you
that
were
be all
thinking
right?
was
Just
gonna happen?
introduce what's already there? Okay. Is to introduce it this evening and have a hearing on it.
In 2 weeks, I
2
believe.
weeks, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so we need to include that, we need to reintroduce it, so.
Reintroduce it?
Well, we didn't introduce it. We only
Oh,
had one
okay.
item.
Adding to the introduction items. Yeah.
Okay,
Do we have to vote on it again?
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
That's
So I
my
can make that
motion.
motion?
Yep.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to add another introduction item. Any discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously again. So that's it for Public Works. Nothing from planning or natural resources. Okay, other items of business. Mr. Weimer?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about, the executives come to us with his priorities about EMS, jail, courthouse exterior, all those things. I know the city council just yesterday, they sent us back last week our statement of principles on the jail with some minor tweakings. And yesterday, I think and I'm looking at Ms. Vargas out there, they asked their staff to prepare an ordinance moving forward on EMS for this fall. So they're kind of got a process moving forward, and I don't think we as a council have figured out, and ultimately we have to either agree with them on ERS or put the EMS or put the jail forward. And we don't seem to have a process for how to get to that and when it's going to happen. And I think it's only fair that we kind of make up our minds sooner than later so people organizing around those things can move forward on them. I know there's been some talk at the city council and had some discussions with them of forming some small work group to talk about jail issues, to try to iron out some of the big issues that we've heard back from the city of Bellingham. It'd be good to do that sooner than later to help us make up our minds, jail, EMS, or maybe there's already a majority of us that have that. But just think we should either get that on the agenda for 2 weeks or somehow set up a process so there's a decision sooner than later.
I know I had spoke with our legislative analyst about starting to draft a resolution to set up a work group for the jail planning. So people can start looking at that and adding their comments to it, and we could introduce it and look at it for introduction at least in 2 weeks. Mr. Mann?
Well, I think the larger issue is, are we likely to prioritize the jail going back to the public with a request for a jail funding vote before we go out with an EMS funding vote? I mean, I'm ready to vote on that right now. There's no doubt in my mind we are obligated to go forward with an EMS vote right now. And I think it would be helpful to send that message to the city either through a formal process or even just some kind of a resolution tonight. But it's a great point that Mr. Weiner brings up. I don't know what the formal process is for doing that, because usually we rely on the administration to do that, and we have a somewhat difference of opinion with the administration, or at least I do, and I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but I can't envision a scenario where we go forward with the jail vote ahead of an EMS vote.
Right. Ms. Brenner?
Well, my big concern on the EMS one, whether we do it now or later, is I'm not going to support a property tax increase. We need to do it as a sales tax, and I'll debate anybody anytime about property tax being way more regressive than sales tax. I mean, I can't tell you how many people think, only those property owners, only the rich people, they're the ones that have to pay it. I've had so many interns from Western, and then I explain to them, do you rent? Yes. You don't think your landlord's going to pass it on to you? Oh, I never thought of that. And I think we need to be very careful when we decide how it's going to be funded. And that, to me, is the make or break, whether I'd support it.
Mr. Donovan?
Well, my understanding is the EMS is a property tax.
Doesn't have to be.
Okay, so I will, this is a discussion I would love to have, because I will find studies about what taxes are more regressive, and we can do that. But But no, yeah, but I don't see any of this stuff as separate conversations. The budget is going to come up really quick, and we're going to have a conversation about property tax. The EMS thing is going to affect our capacity to do property tax. The jail thing is going to affect our capacity to just tax, period. So I mean, maybe this is a discussion for finance, and maybe this is where we get the treasurer in here, but thinking about how all these things fit together in terms of what we can afford to do. I can't see talking about them separately, and I can't see waiting until we actually get to the budget to talk about just the budget and talk about the jail separately and talk about EMS separately. I mean, maybe there's time to do this by the time EMS needs to go on the ballot, but I'd like to see us either, and maybe with the city, but even just among ourselves, like where do we want to go in terms of how much money we think we can raise for these things between the budget and between levies, and talk about that all together, not as separate issues.
Mr. Weimer?
I think the discussion we've had is exactly why I raised this, that we need to start the discussion and have a process, because I can see that it could take a while, and I think it probably gets even more complicated, because when you look at the EMS proposal, it's going to free up over $1 million for the county and over $1 million for the city. And I think they're not separate processes either, and we should look at that money that's being freed up, and if we move forward with EMS, we better be able to tell the public we're going to hold on to that money maybe for something to do with the jail or
Well, you're already
diversion
assuming
services.
we're going forward with that proposal.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the discussion. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
the
We
city
gotta see
already
it.
went forward with it as was. You know, they made up their mind in one meeting.
My words, the EMS thing is going like the jail went. It came to us, and then it didn't get discussed, and then by the time it went to the ballot, we didn't get
Right, so we need to have this discussion sometime in the next short while, so we can decide which we think has the best chance of passing and what we want to put on the ballot.
Mr. Mann?
Well, then, I would suggest we have, in Finance Committee, a presentation from the Bellingham Police Chief, who gave the presentation to the city of Bellingham, and have him come back to us again and give us the presentation and explain it to us.
You mean the fire chief?
What did I say?
Police.
Sorry, Fire Chief Bill Newbold, and get a presentation from him, so and ask lots of questions. We didn't have a lot of time at our last presentation, and I think it would help to have the presentation from somebody who's supporting it. And anyway, I'd encourage the finance chair, or I guess public works chair too, if schedules don't allow for it to be in finance, but I think that would be something, should be on the agenda in 2 weeks.
The police, or the fire, I almost said
My
it.
bad.
The fire chief has May 2nd kind of penciled in on his agenda.
For us?
For us.
Oh, great.
We haven't decided where we want it to land,
that's nice.
but definitely to come and talk to us.
Oh, okay, good. Right. You read my mind.
Yeah. Mr. Brown?
I support Mr. Mann's suggestion. The only thing is, I'm wondering if it would be better to have that at night, in the nightly meeting, because that gives visibility to the public. They can watch it.
On an issue this big, I agree with you. I agree with you. Maybe just,
No.
Never mind, I thought he had his
So you're saying have it as an evening meeting? I couldn't quite hear.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
okay, so we've landed on, we'll have a evening presentation by Chief Newbold and whoever he brings with him. And carry
Chair.
on from there. But I agree with Mr. Weimer and Mr. Mann. We have to make these decisions very soon because there's a lot of work to be done prior to, the election. Mr. Mann?
I think one other person to have talking to us about this is maybe the auditor or the treasurer,
Yeah.
to figure out, make sure we get all the exact steps to get it on the ballot and that we understand the taxing implications countywide. I'm not aware that if the people vote a property tax increase, that it impacts our ability to do any other property tax or sales tax on our councilmatically. So, we need to bring in the experts.
And I was going to, I don't know if it's the assessor or the treasurer, but somebody who can talk to us about the relationship between the money being raised, this quote, extra money from EMS, and how we can spend that on capital generally and obligate it to be spent on capital, I think is going to help us sell this tax that needs 60% approval. And I don't think, so I'm happy to hear from the chief, but I don't think there's the skill set that we need to put all these pieces together. If there's 1.4 million in extra money, how do we get that to go to capital and maybe then to the jail and or to all these other capital projects we're looking at? And I don't know who that is we need to talk to about that, but that's what I want to hear about.
Ms. Brenner.
Well, I think Councilmember Donovan is being very kind, because that presentation was pretty scary. It really did sound like, oh man, we're going to have all this money for lots more administration and all this other stuff. And that doesn't, I think we need somebody who supports it and understands the limitations and can explain that to us. And that probably would be the auditor or somebody rather than the fire chief. That was the big concern.
Mr. Sadhu?
I think the other part is I want everybody to remember that last time when we did the jail budget and everything, we are going to use the money we are raising, whichever way we raise, which goes to the operations. And operations of the jail and sheriff's department. That is a much bigger money. Over the 30 years of the bonds, we spent $1.2 billion on the operations alone. And the jail is $100 million. And we are so concerned about the capital cost. If we can reduce the operating cost by 10%, jail comes for free. And we must really recognize that and see, because we are taxing the sales tax or property tax, however we do that, but part of that money is going to the operations. All of it is not going to the capital. So that is another, I have brought up a couple of times before also last year, but that is an element we must be very cognizant of that than just talking about the cost of jail.
Anything else on that subject?
I think that was plenty.
Okay, any other business?
No, sorry.
Okay, no other business. We'll go to council member updates. Down that way?
Nothing.
Mr. Mann?
Actually, I do. I don't usually have any council member updates, but I have a couple things to bring up. So, I'm on the Incarceration Prevention Task Force, and I just wanted to let you know that both Lummi Nation and the city of Bellingham, because of the restrictions, the booking restrictions and the capacity restrictions imposed by the county and the sheriff, and reasonably so, we essentially forced them to start doing incarceration prevention, whether they liked it or not, and it's working very well. And the city of Bellingham, and Councilmember Vargas can correct me if I'm wrong, but they've gone to some electronic home monitoring with GPS in it, some very high-tech stuff that costs them $15 a day to operate instead of the jail bed rate, which is $100 a day. And I think they're saving roughly $30,000 a month so far, and lowering the number of people in the jail. They've got folks going to jails in other counties, not too many right now, but that's working out fairly well. The Lummi Nation has also come through and responded with shipping some of their folks to other counties or other jails, especially those serving longer sentences. And so, number one, I really want to credit the city of Bellingham and Lummi Nation for stepping up and actually implementing some incarceration prevention and reduction strategies. It's good for all of us. And let people know that's happening, and sort of shine the light on the county, because we could be doing a lot of these things too, and we're not yet. And I'm working on it, and the task force is working on it, and I hope for some success there. The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't think I've ever done this in 6 years on the council, but I really appreciate and respect the courage that it takes for members of the public to come here in open session and talk to us. But I was actually really struck and frankly offended by someone equating gay marriage with pedophilia, and especially using Deuteronomy in the Bible to justify it. That really bothered me. And it's a free country, and we're allowed to disagree and be respectful. That was offensive. And, Deuteronomy also calls for stoning to death girls who have sex before marriage. So I don't think anyone's advocating for that. At least I hope no one's advocating for that. First time in 6 years I've responded to a comment in open session, but I just felt like I had to.
And here.
Can we move right along?
On a totally different note, we all, I assume, are very familiar with John Watts, who has served on the Bellingham City Council, retired from the Bellingham City Council, and his wife, Joan Casey, and I just wanted to give a recognition for John's grief because he lost Joan recently, and the memorial service will be on May 4th, I believe, at the Buddhist Centre on State Street. So my condolences to John and his family.
I just wanted to comment on the first thing you talked about. I noticed too that Councilmember Mann talked about, I did notice that our numbers seem to be doing better, but the last few times they've gone back up, and there's nobody here. I noticed there was nobody here from the Sheriff's Office, so I wouldn't mind a little bit of a some kind of, maybe that was a glitch that just happened or something, but I was noticing they're going up quite a bit. So.
Council member updates?
Nothing to report. Appreciate Councilmember Mann's saying what I was thinking about public comment.
I do too.
No,
Mr.
nothing
Sadoo?
to report. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, we're adjourned.